Yo, what's good, E7 fam? Pat here, back to talk about the October 27th balance adjustment preview that was just shown this morning over on Stove. And they finally did it. The Mad Lads actually did it. They decided to nerf a character for the first time in about 3 years in this game. They will be nerfing Hwayoung. So if I'm the first person that you're hearing this from, whether that's good news or bad news, you can let me know down in the comments below. Let me know all of your thoughts on this entire issue, because it's definitely one that is going to be talked about a lot in this community over the next couple of days to weeks for sure. In this video, I do want to talk about all of the changes to Hwayoung, how I think Hwayoung will be played going forward. I want to talk about the history of nerfs in general. And I also want to talk about some other hero candidates that they mentioned here in this announcement that could potentially also be seeing a nerf in the coming weeks. So let's read their announcement together. Hello, this is Epic 7. This is a pre-announcement to the planned balance adjustment of the 5-star Covenant hero, Hwayoung, which will take place after the October 27th update. We will release a separate announcement for the other hero candidates that will be part of the upcoming October 27th balance adjustment 2 weeks before the update. This, by the way, to me says that they're probably also nerfing Apocalypse Robbie, because Apocalypse Robbie is the World Arena skin. World Arena ends on October 15th in just a few weeks. So they probably don't want to stir the pot too much by suggesting that a character that they're giving away a skin for is going to be getting nerfed, because that would obviously demoralize or really anger some players if they knew that beforehand, I feel like. But just know that they're probably going to be nerfing Apocalypse Robbie, I feel like, as well, based on the timing of when the hero candidates will be unveiled. Going back to the announcement, before we begin, we would like to sincerely apologize for the disruption this balance adjustment will cause to our Heirs gameplay. With this in mind, we would like to explain and guide you through the process of how we came to this balance adjustment decision in as much detail as possible. Epic 7's balance adjustment system has focused on improving heroes rather than diminishing them to retain the value of the hero that our heirs put time and effort into nurturing them. When a hero has too much influence, our response has always been to make appropriate changes by buffing other heroes via periodic balance adjustments. However, although we at Epic 7 have tried several different approaches, it has become evident that the 5-star Covenant hero, Hwayoung's overbearing influence throughout a large portion of the game has been difficult to suppress. As an aside, I agree with them. My own personal stance on nerfs or buffs is that the person making the game should just make the decision that is best for their game, because no matter what you do, you're not going to make everyone happy. By taking inaction against Hwayoung for this long, you have angered a certain subset of people, which may or may not be bigger or smaller than the amount of people that you would have upset had you had just changed her in the first place. So this is just them saying they are going to make the necessary adjustments in order to make the game better long-term for them. It's their game at the end of the day. They want to do what they think will be best for it. So again, they're just kind of trying to guide us through why they reached that decision. And also, yes, this character really is that good. She is probably the most played Go War unit in the game. She is prevalent in a lot of arena offense and defense comps, and she is almost permanently banned at the top of the ladder in World Arena. And if she's not, she is almost assuredly going to be one of the very first characters picked, and it kind of reinforces a very stale gameplay pattern, at least in my opinion, where either the Hwayoung player just kind of rolls over you, or the opponent responds by just countering with a cleave strategy, in which case the Hwayoung player gets rolled over. Like, games are just over in a flash when she's involved in the first place. Going back to the announcement, in particular, due to 5-star Covenant hero Hwayoung's presence, there has been significant decrease in the usage of other attack-based heroes in the PvP space. This shift in hero usage, in turn, has caused many difficulties as we work to provide appropriate balance adjustments and diversified PvP content. While we sought to reduce our impact in the current meta with several indirect approaches, we concluded that it was necessary to resolve the issue directly, which ultimately led to this decision you see before you today. Once again, with a heavy heart, we regret to inform you that 5-star Covenant hero Hwayoung will be going through a balance adjustment. Please see below for the planned balance adjustment details. All right, so the probability and number of turns seen below are based on fully enhanced heroes. Skill cooldowns will not be changed unless otherwise stated. Skill descriptions mentioned in this preview may be updated by the time of the actual update. So, what they're going to change. S1 now instead of giving 15% combat readiness, it will give 0% combat readiness. On top of that, it used to have the effect of you get bonus damage inflicted to the target proportional to the caster's attack, whether the attack missed or not. Now you only get it on a successful attack. So that means that this character has diminished usage against characters like Violet and Remnant Violet. It makes them a bit better. Obviously, characters like Senya are still very good. Hwayoung, honestly, is probably still pretty decent against those characters as well. She's just no longer a straight-up hard counter to it. You'll note here that the damage dealt, the base damage dealt, is going to be increased on Supersonic Kick. However, the additional damage on it is going to be decreased. So what that means is that this character is not going to be as good against those Tempest Surin style characters. She's not going to be like able to one-shot potentially a Tempest Surin or a Roy Mustang or a Sage Vivian. She might still be able to. We have to actually see the numbers, but it's going to be not as effective as it used to be. She still does stack with Uberius' Tooth. You still will be able to play Tooth on her, and it still will be fairly strong, I feel like. But do keep in mind, the base damage is increased and the splash is going to be decreased. So we have to see those numbers. This basically suggests, because this base damage is increased here and the additional damage doesn't work on a miss and it's decreased in general, just again says to me, not going to be as good against some of the characters that she was in the past. So like, you're not going to be able to just insta-win versus Violet now. Not going to be able to just insta-win versus a character like, again, Sage Vivian. Next change here, they are changing the attack percentage that you get on Prairie Hawk, her S2 passive, from 50% to 30%. This just translates straight up to you're going to lose 1,000 attack, basically. Whatever your Hwayoung has right now, you're probably going to lose about 1,000 attack. That is based on some quick napkin math that I had with Senya. Senya has 1,112 attack, I believe, and Hwayoung has 1,119. So the difference between them is about 7. Senya is 30% attack off of her passive, whereas Hwayoung was 50. So again, the difference between the average Hwayoung and the average Senya is about 1,000 attack for the most part. So if you're just all in on attack, if you had like 7,200, expect to have probably 6,200, maybe even less, 6,100 or so. You're going to be looking at about 1,000 attack decrease. And that's a big deal because of the other part of Prairie Hawk. You get a barrier proportional to your attack at the beginning of the battle, as well as at the end of each of your turns. Losing 1,000 attack means that the barrier inherently is just going to be a lot smaller, which means that you will obviously be a lot squishier. So now going forward, if you wanted to play that bruiser style Hwayoung that sticks around a lot longer, you have to choose between having more attack or actually more bulk. You're going to probably end up needing more defense than you probably already have right now. Like right now, I play about 1,400. Realistically, going forward, I probably will have to build about 1,500 or more defense in order to maintain that same level of durability that I already have on Hwayoung. Next up, we'll skip down here to the Awakened version of Monarch's Flaming Strike. What it used to do, after dispelling all debuffs from the caster, attacks the enemy with a secret technique and grants immunity to Hwayoung for 2 turns. Penetrates the target's defense. That's a 100% defense pen outright, no matter what the target is. When the target's max health is greater than the caster's max health, damage dealt increases proportional to the difference up to a maximum of 100%. So now you still get the dispel, you still get the 2-turn immunity, but instead the last part of the attack is changed to when the target's max health is greater than the caster's max health, penetrates the target's defense with penetration rate increasing proportional to the difference up to a maximum of 100%. So you no longer get 100% defense penetration on Monarch's Flaming Strike against every single target. So against lower health characters, Monarch's Flaming Strike is not going to do as much damage. Because you no longer get this increased damage here proportional to the difference, the base damage of the move will be increased. However, the penetration rate, which currently is, I believe, about 7,000 health between the current Hwayoung's health versus the maximum health of the target, to get the full damage, right here it says required max health difference is going to be increased. That means realistically it's going to end up being higher than 7,000 in order for you to get similar numbers to what you had to Monarch's Flaming Strike. So realistically, it might be closer to like 9 or 10,000. So against a target that has maybe 10k or more health than your Hwayoung, the Hwayoung will probably still end up killing the character because it looks like they're trying to preserve this character's ability to one-shot the tanks and the bruisers. but they're making it so that Monarch's Flaming Strike really doesn't do a whole hell of a lot against like average health characters or like dodge units. Like, for example, Violet is commonly played between like 15 and 17k. The fact that Supersonic Kick no longer really is that detrimental to him, and his lower health pool means that Monarch's Flaming Strike is probably also not super damaging against him. So a character like that, who is just caught in the crosshairs by just Hwayoung's sheer existence, is probably in a better spot for it. A lot of characters, Landy, for example, is probably in a better spot for this change as well. Yes, she'll probably succumb to Supersonic Kick or come very close to it, but like Monarch's Flaming Strike shouldn't just outright kill her now, hopefully, with these changes. Perhaps the most important change, though, here, Monarch's Flaming Strike is on a 4-turn cooldown now instead of a 3-turn cooldown. With the loss of the 15% combat readiness on Supersonic Kick, this character probably is not going to be spamming this move anywhere near as frequently as she is on the current live patch. Thank goodness, because it's really obnoxious to play against, especially in something like Guild War defense or like arena defense, because it's just, if you somehow haven't won the game, I'm sure everybody has just been kicked multiple times throughout one of those matches, and it really, really doesn't feel super, super good. So let's read the rest of their announcement. The purpose of this balance adjustment is to ensure that Hwayoung remains specialized in contesting enemies with high health while reducing her excessive influence as a damage dealer. Also, because her fast turn cycling made her difficult to deal with, she will be adjusted to a similar level as other heroes. So this is what I was talking about. They don't want you to be able to cycle with Monarch's Flaming Strike so fast. 1. Supersonic Kick's powerful additional damage reduce the viability of lower health, attack-based heroes, high evasion heroes, so this is the Violet I was talking about, and heroes with damage reduction effects. So this is specifically referencing characters like Sylvan Sage Vivian, like Tempest Cern, like Roy Mustang. To resolve this issue, we plan to add a hit condition to Supersonic Kick and reduce the additional damage. To compensate for this loss of damage, we'll slightly increase the basic skills damage. So don't expect this to be like a ton of damage. This is going to probably be an overall damage loss on Supersonic Kick because it is just way too strong of an S1. Monarch's Flaming Strike penetration rate will now be calculated proportionally to the difference in max health, and the condition to reach 100% penetration will be increased. While Hwayoung will still be able to inflict significant amounts of damage to heroes with higher max health, her damage against those that do not have much of a difference in health will be reduced. So hopefully this curve is the thing that we're talking about. All these characters that are under 20k health, hopefully they do not just like auto die to this. One thing I would have liked to have seen is like Monarch's Flaming Strike actually has to hit to get this penetration rate, because like I don't really feel like this character should just be killing Shu in one hit. Even with these changes, she probably still is going to kill a character like Shu in one hit or come very, very close to it. To alleviate the difficulty of responding to her fast turn cycle, we'll remove her combat readiness increase effect from Supersonic Kick and increase the cooldown by 1 turn. Yep. We hope these changes will increase the diversity of PvP heroes to be used in various ways and expands the options of team combinations when facing Hwayoung. Okay, so I'll talk about this in a second, the announcement to changes to recall policy. Yeah, overall, I think Hwayoung, the character that she's going to most be like now with these changes, is Straze. You're going to be using her primarily as a tank buster. You're as like an aggressive player that just wants to kind of dunk on characters like, say, Apocalypse Shirabi or your Alencias. That's primarily what Hwayoung is for now. Like, you don't just pick her every single game, because overall, I feel like her damage and survivability and all that is going to be greatly diminished because of how the penetration rate works right now. The way that people have been playing Hwayoung right now, where it's like either like 11k to 12k health, that's probably still going to be fine. The way that people play it, where it's like 14 to 16k health, that's probably no longer going to work, because you probably will be outside of the range of the new penetration rate. Again, have to see the numbers, but that's just, they know what Hwayoung looks like. They know what the top players' Hwayoungs look like. They probably have it adjusted in such a way that if you're playing Hwayoung with higher bulk, you're probably not going to be able to use her for her intended purpose. She might not do enough damage. Remember, you did just lose essentially 1,000 attack, and she's just going to be a lot squishier. So they're basically introducing counterplay to her. The character has to be squishier in order for her to do the job that they want her to do. But the trade-off is that she's going to be a lot worse as a standard damage dealer. So again, Straze is the character that comes to mind. He's there. He comes in. He S3s. He blows up your tank. And then he's just kind of an all right damage dealer throughout the rest of the fight. That's how I envision Hwayoung to be. I think that most of the stuff I talked about on how to play Hwayoung will probably be out of date. I might have to revisit that video in greater detail and make like a smaller redo of it. Normally, I use pinned comments to change my how to play versions of characters, but this is a pretty substantial change. We are basically taking a bruiser that was good in all facets of PvP and now probably changing her into more of a glass cannon style niche pick character. I do think that the character, because of that, is probably going to be built even faster than she normally is. Like a lot of people build around like 230 now. I think you're going to see her in like the 240 to 260 range now. Again, with a lot less bulk, because I think she's going to have a much harder time surviving. And again, you're just going to have her there primarily as a tank buster, which is what she was originally designed for. Before we actually talk about this announcement on the changes to the recall policy, I want to talk about why we need to talk about this announcement in the first place. If you've not been playing Epic 7 for a very long time, you may not know that when the Mystic Summons were first introduced, Silverblade Araminta and Sage Ball and Cezanne were completely snapped when they came out. We didn't have immunity set back then, and if Silverblade took the first turn, it was basically just a guaranteed stun on the entire enemy team, and you just burn them to death. And Sage Ball basically made it so that if you did actually outspeed, he just slept you, and then you paired it with a character like Ruel for an infinite safety net, and it was kind of ridiculous. And then you had Crimson Armin as well that was on that team, and it just made it very difficult to punch through, which eventually led to them buffing Arbiter Vildred so that when he would die, he would get 100% CR and a guaranteed greater attack buff, which could just destroy everything. Because that way there was a counterplay to actually the Crimson Armin. So basically RB, Silverblade, and Sage Ball were just completely busted at one point, and they ended up nerfing those characters. They kind of nerfed Silverblade into the ground. She still sees moderate amount of play, but never really recovered. Sage Ball got nerfed into the ground and eventually got buffed to be almost as good as he used to be, which is what he is right now. And then obviously RB got nerfed into the state he currently is on live, which was very strong for a long time, but still not super great. So as compensation for that, what Smilegate and Super Creative did was they gave everybody ML5 selectors that actually wanted to trade in the nerfed characters, which meant that the people who already were fortunate enough to have ML5s, because they were a lot harder to get back then, could just choose the best ones and be even more ahead. So if you were already lucky enough to have Silverblade, to have Sage Ball and Cezanne, you then just got to pick whatever you wanted that was really strong. Except for Apocalypse Robbie, who was the newest character at the time, and I believe she wasn't very, very good. But for somebody like me, that meant I got a free fall on Cecilia, which was very, very strong. And this kind of, enraged people because it was like, well, if you nerf characters, we demand compensation, which made them kind of hesitant to be, wanting to do that. Basically, most of the community hated how overpowered these characters were. They caved and nerfed them, but then when they realized what kind of compensation they would have to give out, they didn't really want to do it anymore. So that's why you've not really seen any nerfs, only like quote unquote adjustments or bug fixes a lot of the time. It's because they really don't want to give out this level of compensation, because the community is just going to feel entitled to ML5 selectors every single time that they nerf a character. So if they end up nerfing Apocalypse Robbie, for example, like I'm thinking that they're going to end up doing, then they'll probably have some kind of workaround, because gacha laws, like gambling laws across the different territories this game is played in, are very fickle. So they're going to have to give you something. They can't just nerf it. I know, for example, in Japan, you can't just nerf the character and not give anything. That's going to be a huge no-no. That's going to land you in hot water. So that's why we need to have this announcement on the changes to the recall policy, because they have to address it, largely for legality reasons, I feel like. So let's take a look at it. The recall policy pertaining to recalling a Covenant hero due to a balance adjustment that reduced their viability will be changed. Heirs will now be able to exchange their recall target for another hero of the same grade that has been released as of the recall starting date. The adjusted policy will come into effect at the time that 5-star Covenant hero Hwayoung's balance adjustment is applied. However, Covenant heroes that are only obtainable through limited summons, collaborations, or cannot be summoned, such as Zero, Yuna, etc., are unavailable for selection. In addition, even if the selected hero is a recall of a duplicate hero, you will not receive Covenant coins. When you proceed With the recall of Hwayoung, depending on the memory imprint grade of the recall target, you will receive a new memory imprint material called Mana Slate, temporary name. They can't just give you the unknown slates because of the reasons here. Mana Slates, temporary name, cannot be used on Moonlight Heroes, Limited Heroes, or Collab Heroes. They don't want you to use slates on those because that's primarily what slates are used for. They know their monetization model very well. They make their money off of collabs. They make their money off of limiteds. They make their money off of Moonlight Heroes. If you could just easily triple S these, it would actually, I guess, hurt their sales in some way. So that's probably why they're doing it that way. They want to make it so that whales are whaling to get triple S's of very hard to obtain heroes otherwise, and everybody else has to just go the slow route of slates. Hwayoung's recall period will start from October 27th to November 11th, and then all this is the standard stuff where how you go about the recall, if you want to use the in-game chat box for so on and so forth for the various different recalls. So overall, though, I am very, very happy with these changes. I'm a little disappointed that Hwayoung might not be as good because I think she's probably my favorite character that came out of episode 4, at least as far as aesthetics and story. Although, again, she is oppressive and I don't really like playing against her. Playing with her is awesome. Playing against her is really, really rough. So hopefully she'll still be somewhat playable with the changes. I think she probably will. At least, like I said, in my head, you're going to be that faster niche pick character. Nerfs, though, are, at least in my opinion, a very welcome change. I have played a lot of competitive card games throughout my day. For those of you guys who don't know, I've been pretty much somebody who's been playing card games my whole life. Epic 7 just has a lot of overlap in my skill set with that actual hobby of mine. And one thing I've learned from just like a long time of playing those kinds of games is that, one, again, you'll never make your player base happy. You always want to do what is best for your game at the end of the day. So while some people might hate nerfs, other people will embrace them. If you don't nerf somebody, the same thing is going to be true as well. If the format's just stale and you just aren't willing to change it, it's going to make a certain number of people very happy and a certain number of people very upset as well. So again, good on them for actually going with the change. I think that just in general, nerfs, bans, erratas, restrictions, those things can only be healthy for the game because otherwise we succumb to power creep, which is something you've probably heard a lot. Power creep being essentially things just keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger in order to keep the meta fresh. It's kind of like you're forcibly rotating the meta by just making things more and more powerful. Well, how things are right now in Epic 7, they're so powerful that games are ending in record time. You can just die before you ever get a turn pretty much at almost every single level of play. Basically, characters have to do a ton of damage because otherwise how do they kill a character like Hwayoung or Apocalypse Robbie? And then characters also have to be blazing fast because how else are they supposed to take a turn before they die from a character like, again, Apocalypse Robbie or Hwayoung? And then you get to new characters like we have now, like Lua, who have very little counterplay, it feels like, and are so fast that they're almost guaranteed to get turn one if somebody with good speed gear actually is willing to invest in them. And then they have things like resets so that they can stuff characters like Hand Guy, because otherwise, like, how else are you going to be able to, produce a debuffer like Lua if she doesn't actually reset Hand Guy and Designer Lilibet, because they literally neutralize almost every single debuff in the entire game. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we have reached a point now where by constantly going up and up and up the power creep scale, there's nowhere really else to go, it feels like. And you're just going to keep making the next broken hero. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if Lua, who we talked about the other day in my first thoughts, initial impressions video, was also just a really broken hero, because that's just kind of how it feels like characters have to be designed in a world before we actually had the Nerf hammer. We were just not able to have characters that didn't do insane damage, that weren't crazy fast, that didn't have to have all these insane hoops built into them to get around, again, characters like Hand Guy and Designer Lilibet. So yeah, bring on the nerfs. I think it's only good for the game. I think it'll help the game long term, as long as they play it smart. I've said before in my videos, I definitely trust Smilegate and Super Creative. They have always managed to right the ship. I played through the first couple of months to year that Seaside Bologna was out, and that was probably the darkest time in Epic 7 history, because The game was crazy stale, and it didn't matter what character they brought out. It just didn't really impact the meta whatsoever, it felt like, at least until we got Rwana. So yeah, again, happy that we actually have nerfs. Finally, I want to talk about these hero candidates that we talked about at the start of the video. We will release separate announcement for other hero candidates that will be part of the upcoming October 27th balance adjustment preview. So if we jump over here to the actual game itself, the first character that I think should get an adjustment is Conqueror Lilius, and it's probably going to be a lot smaller than you think. I think the only thing this character really needs is the speed being toned down to about, I'd say personally, around 113, 115 at the absolute fastest. At this point, kneel down is basically a detriment versus characters like Lionheart Sirmia, is a detriment versus characters like Rwana. We have Moon Bunny and designer Lilibet to answer for honor. And then obviously cover has its own set of problems as well because it gives a barrier. So that's obviously exposed to things like, say, Operator Sigret, or maybe a character like Desert Jewel Basar, for example. So I think that there's definitely enough counterplay to the actual kit itself. The problem is that when she's like 305 or 310 speed, realistically at like 113 speed, if you really wanted to go full send into speed into her, then like the fastest you could realistically get her is 290, which is not fast enough to outspeed a character like Assassin Sid, who could just pick her off because she probably sacrificed a bunch of bulk to get to that actual point. I come from like an era, I guess, of like the very old PvP style of play where I like having this triangle meta where assassins are the fastest characters. They are there to destroy other fast openers who are not as fast. Like I said, like a 110 to 119 speed opener should never outspeed a character like Assassin Kali or Assassin Sid, and therefore they get picked off. Now the counterplay to that is bruisers and tanks. They don't take enough damage from a character like Acid or Assassin Kali. They can just tank through it, they can survive, and then they can retaliate with their own damage and just win the game that way. And then obviously the bruiser players, the tank players, they get controlled by the slower openers that are in the 110 to 119 speed range. It's basically a triangle. Assassins can't kill bruisers. Bruisers get controlled by openers. Openers aren't fast enough and don't have enough bulk to survive the damage from assassins. That's how I envision the metagame to actually, kind of be. And it's really weird that it's not that way. And one of the reasons why it's not that way is because characters like Conqueror Lilius are in the 120 speed bracket when they have no real business being in the 120 speed bracket. Other characters that I think I would like to see, adjusted. This girl right here, Angel of Light Angelica. I think almost everyone watching this video can agree that this character was a mistake. She's just really oppressive in what she does. The 100% chance to silence the enemy team with also the strip and the 2-turn unbuffable it's really, really high. The fact that it's also a non-attack skill means that you there's it doesn't trigger anything. Like it doesn't like trigger a counter or any of this other stuff. There's not really that much counterplay to it besides just have hand guy or just resist the thing. Realistically, me personally, how I would probably change it, I think it should only silence one person, the person you initially silence. Like it's an AoE move, but whichever character you click on, that is the one that gets silenced, but the other 3 characters are just getting the unbuffable and the strip. I think that would be fine. I've had guildmates suggest that this should just be like 75 or 85% silence instead, just so that way there's some more RNG. I like that option a bit less, but it's definitely an improvement over what we have. Also, Ritualistic Touch. This move does not need a 25% combat readiness pushback. This character is already just zooming due to the S2 passive Guardian Light. Which, by the way, why does this character need to be immune to stun? Yeah, this character just has just too much in the kit. Anything they can do to tone this character down, I think, would be good for the game. And then the final character that I'm pretty confident we're definitely getting a nerf for is Apocalypse Robbie, because again, this character is just pick ban all the time, man. Like this character is usually in the first 3 picks in almost every single game. I think was the most picked character at Worlds, if I'm not mistaken. So the data definitely suggests that this character is overtuned for sure. As for how I think they probably should change it, Deliverance, Soul Exchange definitely does way too much damage. I said it when the changes were made that I expected, because it was a stacking move, that it would be akin to like Spectre Tenebria. Spectenny gets about 10% damage every time someone dies, stacking up to 5 times. So that is 50% extra damage when you get 5 stacks. This only stacks 3 times. So I was like realistically expecting maybe 15%, so that way you get 45% at max stacks, like Spectre gets 50% at max stacks. That was what I was expecting. I was not expecting that it was going to be 75% at max stacks. That is huge. That's almost double where I expected the move's bonus damage to actually end up. So this move is definitely too high on damage. Enables way too many easy comebacks. On top of that, I don't think we need the skill nullifier on this move anymore. The skill nullifier is a holdover for when Apocalypse Ravi was first introduced and she wasn't very good, because you'd kill a guy, they'd revive, they'd come back with like 30 or 40% CR. The skill nullifier was to give you a fighting chance that maybe they would get their turn. Now they're basically guaranteed to get the turn, and they have more health now than they used to as well. So why do we need the skill nullifier anymore anyway? And then if we're going to change anything else, I think War God's Might should probably give less health. Right now, it gives about 2,200 on my Apocalypse Ravi, which is a lot. That basically invalidates or breaks even a lot of Soul Weavers and tanks that are hitting her. In some cases, I actually end up healing off of a character like, say, Diane. I'm going to end up healing more damage than she actually deals. So it just makes it so it's very frustrating and difficult for Apocalypse Ravi to actually be killed. Like, even like regular attackers, like 40% of the damage is just outright mitigated just because of War God's Might. It really doesn't need to be that high. I think it's 8% of her health right now. Realistically, I personally think it should probably be maybe 6%, which is what it is when it's not Mola Gorid, right? I've heard suggestions from friends as like 2 to 4%, but I think that might be a bit too low. Regardless, there should be some adjustment. It shouldn't be this difficult to actually kill this character. The S1, I think, even though it is the best like health scaling S1 in the game, I think they should leave her with that, because if you're going to gut this move, right, and you're going to make it so she's easier to be killed, you have to leave her with something, right? So you might as well leave her with the best, bruiser S1 in the entire game. So that's pretty much my thoughts on that. And that's going to pretty much be my thoughts on everything in this video. If you want to discuss more of this stuff with me, feel free to join my Discord. I love talking shop about game balance all the time. It's definitely like a big passion of mine. I love playing very complex and strategic games, especially very, very balanced ones. And it does irk me when a game is really unbalanced, because I like to think about ways and design space that we could actually change that dynamic and make the game more enjoyable for everybody. So hopefully you did like this video. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye-bye now.